Are you talking this time, starting?
No, you are.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to our last segment of the day, and this segment is on how to remove an epoxy off a floor. And everyone's like, oh, that's easy. Sometimes getting up the epoxy isn't easy. So myself, I'm Dave Bigham, and joining me is Tom Griffin, and he is going
Good
to
afternoon.
help me. We're going to go through some different equipment and some different tooling you can put on that equipment to help solve this problem. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to prep once you've removed what's on the floor. So we're going to start and talk about some different options and some different tooling. Tom, do we want to talk about grinders? And then we'll move to scarifiers. And we're going to talk about ride-on machines and what attachment you can put on a rider to actually take up an epoxy floor.
I like that idea. So I think when we're talking about epoxy floors, the biggest thing that comes to mind for removal is definitely going to be a grinder. You've got head pressure, using different types of tooling. You could use carbide chips. You could try PCDs or micro PCDs. And the reason that you would use that tooling is that it's going to slice through the material and remove it from the floor. Your choice of whether to use a PCD or a micro PCD or a smaller grinder or a bigger grinder, it's all going to depend on how well adhered that epoxy is to the floor that you're trying to remove it. How thick is it? Because Dave put down some really thick epoxy for us today to do a really good demonstration across all these machines. But the thinner epoxy coating that we've got back here in front of the door, if you tried to use a scraper to scrape that up, you'd probably fail. So on a thinner epoxy, I think, a Scarifier or a grinder is probably a better option. But I think definitely when we talk about epoxy removal, grinder is definitely the first thing that comes to mind.
Right. So I think what we're going to do is, since we've got this hooked up to the vacuum, we're going to fire up a big, heavy counter-rotational grinder. It's actually National's GP700 grinder. This machine actually runs off 230 volt single phase and 203 volt three phase. You have the capability of running it wet or dry. We're going to run it dry with a vacuum. We've already installed on the bottom of the machine some PCDs. That's short for polycrystalline diamonds in this industry, but nobody wants to say that. So we stick with the PCD terminology. So we're going to use a smaller vac than we probably should with this machine, but we're going to run the vac to each of these smaller machines. So it should do fine for taking down the ambient dust. We're going to do a little swath with this big grinder, and then we're going to switch over to a little bit smaller grinder next to see kind of how the head pressure and how the thick epoxy reacts to a lighter machine versus a heavier machine.
All right.
So you want to, do we should fire up the vac or?
Yep, I gotcha.
So one thing, guys, I have done is I've taken the weights off this machine, because usually with PCDs you don't need a lot of weight. I am going to turn my speed down a little bit.
Dave, why are you turning the speed down?
To allow the machines to allow the PCDs to cut in and cut through the coatings that we're trying to remove. I'm turning this down to 40 because it was at 60. So now we're at 40 and we're in the same, we've already checked the direction to make sure that the PCDs are spinning in the correct direction. So I'm going to fire this up. As you guys can see, it pretty much just ripped that epoxy right off the floor with those PCDs. Fantastic. It did a great job. I'm going to pull an extension cord over here. Hopefully it's long enough.
So Dave, we're talking about problem solving. Those PCDs are pretty aggressive. I'm looking at the surface profile here. I'm seeing that it left some deeper scratches in the floor. if you were going to be polishing the floor or doing a grind and clear coat, how would you go about getting some of those deeper scratches out?
So now that we have put some pretty aggressive profile on this floor, if we were going to go through and smooth it out for a thinner mill coating, or if for some reason someone spec to polish this floor, you'd want to probably start with a pretty aggressive zero grit, 3-segment oval shaped diamond to really cut into that surface and take down that the high spots that make the grooves. And then you could start with your steps to smooth it out from there if necessary.
All right.
So that's how well this big, huge grinder worked. We're going to try this smaller Helix. It also has some PCDs on it. Basically the same style PCDs. We could put micro PCDs, but we're going to try some PCDs that are the same as the larger machine to see how it kind of affects it. Put on my safety breakaway. What's that? We do. We will show some. Tom's gonna grab some.
Yeah, just looking for where they ended up.
Sure, we can tilt it back and show them that. Absolutely. Actually, we don't even need to tilt it back. I think we have some on the shelf, don't we?
Yeah, I've got some on the shelf if you want
Here,
to
I'll show these. So, you guys, there's a ton of people logged in watching this live. So they're typing in questions, and the question was, can we see the PCDs? So PCDs actually come in all different shapes and sizes for specific reasons. We're going to first talk about PCDs that you can put on the Helix. You can put up little micro PCDs, which this one we actually come in 2 and 4 segment. This is a 4 segment. So you have a lot of head pressure down on 4 little points. It's great for ripping up really thick coatings. Right now I have 2-up PCDs on there. Whoops, I meant to do that. And you could also put a 1-up PCD. So the question that we got in the chat, one more time. Let's get that up there.
And which one is which?
This is the 1-up. This is the 2-up. So there's a lot more head pressure on this versus this. So the tougher the removal, the smaller footprint you want on your PCD. Now Tom's going to show the PCDs that we have currently on the GP700 that we just turned on and ran.
So here's the GP700 PCDs, and as you can see, there's actually 2 different types. The GP700 being a counter-rotational machine, spins in a certain direction, so you've got to have a left and a right since a PCD is a directional tool in order to do the cutting. So the actual PCD part of this diamond are these little black nubbins that you can kind of see sticking out. Yep, there you go. So those are what's actually doing the cutting. The bars on the backside are helping to support the weight of that machine because that's a really big machine. And it's also helping to smooth out those scratch marks and clear some of the debris as you go. But this is kind of the difference of what the 2 types of PCDs look like, but the actual material is all the same.
Thank you, Tom. I'm gonna turn on the vacuum and we're gonna fire up this Helix.
So Dave, the Helix has a high and a low speed. Do we have it on low, similar to what we had for the other machine?
The switch is on the front of the motor, and I do have it on low speed.
Well, there she goes. She's off to the races, ripping through that material. It's not too bad for a small machine.
So it's very lightweight and it's very small, and I was just ripping, and you guys, this coating is just poured out onto this floor. And I don't know if you can see, the camera's pretty tough from that far away, but it's been shot blasted underneath this. It's stock, but it's really thick, so I didn't want to put a real thin mill coating. You will run into these thicker coatings in a lot of places, and this is a great way to tackle how to get it off if you have a grinder. If you have PCDs, try to have some flexibility on smaller micro PCDs versus 1-up and 2-up PCDs, and you guys can see it just knocked it right off the floor. And then, like Tom mentioned a little bit ago, we could actually switch to some diamonds and smooth some of this out if we need to. It's not real rough, but it didn't do 100% of prep because it's a PCD. It's kind of sliding and ripping off. It's not really a diamond that's going to smooth and open up the surface as well. So you've seen 2 different grinders with PCDs on it. There's some other things that we can do. There's other tooling if you have it. We're going to run a Scarifier with a drum that has TSR teeth. Most guys are used to seeing a Scarifier with tungsten teeth that are designed for taking down high spots in the city sidewalk or what the municipalities use. We're actually going to use a drum that is specifically designed for removing glue or thick coatings. It picks away at it. We'll tilt it back. Tom, do you want to tilt it back and show them what the drum looks like before we turn it on?
So on the bottom here, you can see all of the little star teeth here that are actually going to be doing the removal work in contact with the ground. And that's got a drum that's going to spin very high speed and slam those.
Show that after. It's kind of hard to see.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Boom.
All right, so Tom's going to fire up the vac for me, hopefully. Thank you, Tom. And we're going to show you guys how this works. I'm going to start it up. I'm going to lower it into the surface. Oh, too low. It's pretty low. Let me adjust this. I'm going to raise it up a little bit so it's not hitting so hard. You guys can see that the Scarifier leaves kind of like a shot blasted kind of profile, but obviously not as good as a shot blaster. But a shot blaster probably would not work on coating this thick. It would just bounce off it because it's too soft. So we've seen 3 different ways to tackle this really thick, heavy coating. Probably my favorite way is, this is just a little patch, but imagine that this was on several hundred square feet, or even worse, somebody's asked you to remove an epoxy like this over 40 or 50,000 square feet. If that was the case, I would choose to use a National ride-on machine. Move my cords out of the way. And we have a razor blade head attachment on the front of this 5000. And I think a little known fact that I like to talk about every chance I get are 1-inch blades. They're actually very inexpensive, and they're .094 blades, so they look like razor blades, but they don't bend because they're very thick. But what happens is when you put these blades on, a lot more head pressure from either your walk behind or your rider actually ends up at the point on the surface. So for rescraping glue or taking epoxy off the floor, it works really well. And I tell guys that National's really good at sending a lot of ancillary, bonus swivel head blades and blades when you first buy the machine. But if you're going to use a 1-inch blade or razor blades, you need a swivel head attachment that is an RBH, which is the razor blade swivel head attachment, because this groove is shorter So when I put the blade on it, it's going to stick down. In a standard holder that comes with it, your blade kind of disappears into it. So you need to make sure you have a razor blade swivel head attachment for your rider or your walk behinds if you're going to utilize these blades. It's well worth the investment. So let's see if we can make this work. I have a pretty big 1-inch blade on here. If it's really, really affixed well, actually I can increase my production sometimes by using a more narrow blade. And we haven't tested this, so here we go. Let's see what happens.
So, as Dave talked about, he said to increase production, you actually go to a smaller blade. So
Sometimes if it's
obviously-
not coming up.
Yeah, if it's not coming up. So obviously, if it's working, go with the widest blade that you can. To a lot of guys, it seems counterintuitive that if you're struggling with 12-inch blade, that you would then go and try a 6-inch blade because you think it's just going to take twice as long to get through that. But this machine has so much head pressure and so much forward momentum that the less wide the area of the blade, so a 6-inch versus a 12-inch, you're really putting all of the force of that machine onto a much shorter area, and you're putting all that force there, so it's actually going to do a lot more work for you, especially if you are struggling.
So if you guys have a ride-on, or if you have the opportunity to rent one for this application, this is money. You guys, I was just walking this off the floor. Nothing else is going to go as fast as this ride-on machine with a 1-inch blade. And if it was bonded better, or maybe it was even a little bit thinner or a little bit harder and thicker, sometimes the shorter blades, like he was talking about, work better. But still, even with a 6-inch blade, I can walk this stuff off the floor all day long. So be aware that there's a lot of different ways that you can tackle this problem, because this is a big problem. A lot of guys bring in real thick soft coating, they bring in a blaster. And shot blaster doesn't work. Shot blasters work off of the two principles of rebound and vacuum. That coating's real soft, the shot just bounces off it, the coating doesn't come off the floor. They grab a grinder and they put some diamonds on it and they run it over the epoxy, but because it's thick and soft, it just heats up. And the removal process, it might work, but it's going to be really slow and tedious and very frustrating. This right here, just like ringing a bell. Ding, 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 dinner time. It's coming right off the floor. You guys, this is really resilient, thick soft coating, and I just walked it right off the floor with this rider. And this is one of National's smaller, more compact, lightweight ride-on machines, the 5000 that's designed to go in elevators and maneuver in real tight spaces. So even with a small ride-on machine, I'm just killing it with removing epoxy.
Guys, are there any questions out there? Or I should say guys and gals. I shouldn't assume. Guys and gals, any questions? We're here for you guys today. We want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck out of this.
If you guys have questions about any of the blades used for epoxy removal with a ride-on machine for National Flooring Equipment, you can email us. You can get on and watch these videos on YouTube. You can reach out to us. It's great. At National, you can dial our digits, and you're always going to get a surface prep industry expert on the other end of the phone that's going to help you. I'm personally available 24/7, so if you guys need to reach out to me or Tom, you guys can call us at any time, and we'll help you. If you're on a job on the weekend, or if it's later in the evening, super early in the morning, if you're watching this globally, you don't have to wait for the office to open up. You can reach out to me on WhatsApp or lots of other media platforms. So there you go. All right. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to our next session. And Tom, could you talk about one last thing for us on job sites? That's
We
a
have
big
another
thing nowadays.
session. This is the last session, guys.
I meant like in the
please
future,
don't
sorry.
tune in later because it will be some nice static for you. But we've got a special going on our ionizers. They're great for pulling dust and contaminants out of the air, whether on a job site or in your home or your business. They're awesome. The special is on our first generation machines. So if you're interested, please give us a call. You can look us up online. We'd love to talk to you about them. Thanks so much for joining us for Surface Prep 101. If you've been at any of the other sessions or even just this one, I know both Dave and I hope that you found a lot of value in this. And as Dave said, if there's anything else we can do for you, any other questions that you want us to answer, feel free to reach out. We're always a phone call away.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.